one of the cliches that we get is, oh, coach, I just want to play golf at an Ivy League school. Every school in the Ivy League is vastly different. Our setups, our campuses, everything. So, some might be right for you, some might not be right for you. So really do your homework. If you want to go to school a long way from home, that's one thing. If you want to go to school close to home, that's a different one. Does climate matter? Does school size matter? Does being in a small town or a big city matter? These are all great questions to ask yourself. And at the end of the day, there's no right or wrong. Every individual is going to thrive under a different environment. And so it's just a matter of what works for you.
Welcome to The Golf Parent, where you get access to the best minds for junior golf. Today's guest is Tyburski, head coach of Yale men's golf and the 2024 Ivy League Coach of the Year. In this episode, Coach Tyburski shares what it really takes to get recruited by an Ivy League golf program, why simulating pressure is the secret weapon for tournament success, and the one thing parents should focus on right now to support their junior golfers' long-term development. But before we get into it, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Tour Striker, trusted by the best coaches and players in the entire world. Whether your junior golfer is just starting out or chasing national titles, Tour Striker's training aids are designed to build better ball strikers faster. And right now, you can get 15% off all Tour Striker training aids with the code GOLFPARENT. It's all one word, all caps. Go to tourstriker.com. And now, let's get into it. Coach Tyburski, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
So I know we had to move things around a little bit, and the reason why is because scheduling, like the recruitment window just opened up for you, and you're talking to recruits basically all day, and I'm assuming for the next couple of weeks. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. So yesterday, June 15th, starting literally at 12 a.m., became the first day that coaches could initiate recruiting conversations with those prospects that just finished their sophomore year academically. So they were welcome to write us before. Usually you can just kind of basically send out a note saying, I can't respond, direct them to resources on your website, but you can't really dive into any of the finer points of the recruiting process. And so starting yesterday is the day that we can respond, discuss our program, talk about what we look for in a recruit, and that sort of thing. So I was able to watch a good amount of the US Open, but a lot of it too was, getting that communication situated, and it's still in the works. I can guarantee you by the time we're done here today that my inbox will be overflowing again. So, but yeah, it's a crazy time.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So is it, so for the last, I guess, leading up to, the window opening, do you guys have like a fantasy football like board where you're basically moving players around? You have an idea, like, cause it's tough because you can't really learn too much about the players, or like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the Ivy League is known for its rigorous academics standards. So not every player is going to be able to come to Yale, but yet you're going to want to know who your targets are. Like, how do you balance that out, knowing before the window to be like, listen, these are my top 10, top 20, top 50 players, and then trying to figure out the strategy then to recruit them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, golf is a significant part of it. Your qualifications, your accomplishments, all of those things are important, but we can't have any conversation if you don't have the academic resume to align with our admissions office standards. Right around now, even though we can talk to sophomores or those that have just finished their sophomore year, they're still only halfway done with their high school career. So we only have 4 out of 8 semesters of transcripts and academic information to go off of. And within the Ivy League, you see a lot of kids. There's already been one 2027 commit that committed within the first 24 hours of the window opening. And so the reality in the Ivy League is that we are much further behind in the timeline because we want to make sure we have reliable academic information to bring to our admissions offices with your transcript. And to do so with only half of your career complete is not going to be the full picture. And so we actually cannot officially send any materials for a pre-read until July 1st after your junior year. So that's 6 out of 8 transcripts. But again, most high schools get academically more rigorous as you progress after your sophomore into your junior year. So all of that information becomes a little bit more reliable. At the end of the day, we're just trying to, insulate ourselves for success, both as coaches and as the prospects, so that we can, hope for positive admissions verdicts.
That's a crazy amount of one handcuffing you guys a little bit because certain you could be super excited about reaching out right now for the class of 2027 and all the stars could align where you're like, okay, this is a perfect candidate, but then you realize that, okay, there's still 6 out of the 8 semesters where they have to not only keep the grades that they have but keep increasing. Otherwise, they can't even get onto the team. So you got to balance that, and then the players have to balance the grades as well. So, yeah, that's challenging, especially because I mean you had such great success at Colgate as well for years. Was it at? I'm assuming it's there still is a standard of academics, but was it nearly as rigorous as Yale?
Yeah, it honestly fell almost in complete alignment with, kind of how Yale and Ivy League schools do it. Colgate was a very academically rigorous school. At any academically rigorous school, that's your first priority. Athletics comes second, and so it didn't require much adjusting going from Colgate to Yale because at the end of the day, we have to look for the academics first. And the other thing that's adding another layer of complexity to the process is a lot of academically rigorous institutions are now requiring standardized testing. And so we cannot support a prospect in the admissions process unless you have a standardized testing score. A couple of Ivy League schools might. I don't think it's everybody that has fully required it yet, but most have. And so most prospects also have not taken a standardized test score halfway through their sophomore year. The ones that are probably ahead of the curve have it scheduled in the fall, but the majority aren't taking their first SAT or ACT until probably, December, January, or February during their junior academic year. So all of these timelines get pushed back, and it obviously can be, uncomfortable for the prospect to see their fellow players and friends committing and doing all this stuff. But the reality is that by choosing the academically rigorous route, these are kind of the terms, conditions, and timelines that we have to align with.
It makes sense. So, okay, so going from Colgate, which was also academically rigorous, and then coming to Yale, and congratulations. I mean, the success that you had in your first year, 2024. I mean, you won the Ivy League championship. You were also unanimously voted the coach of the year, which must have felt pretty good. I mean, unanimous, right? Like that's
Yeah.
there wasn't even any dissenting vote.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. To have the success we had to win 2 regular season tournaments and then culminating with the Ivy League championship in my inaugural season was everything I could have asked for. It was, winning is hard. Especially in any sport, winning is hard. But in golf, to be the best, both as a team and individually on any given week, is quite a tall task. And so to be able to do that right off the bat was everything I could have asked for, and I was so proud of our student athletes.
Okay, I want to get into what it takes to actually win as a team and individually in a second here, but take me through because I'm kind of curious. Okay, so day one, you're sitting in the head coach, seat now, and you're looking around. You're in your office. What was your plan of attack? Like, did you map out a list? Did you have an idea of culture change? I mean, what was it that you were like, okay, looking back now after a couple of years, where you're like, okay, hindsight's 2020. I realized that these maybe 3 things that I put into place is directly what led to us, winning later in the season.
Yeah, the first thing I did when I got named the coach was to find a day and a time that worked for every one of the players that I was inheriting, to just have a one-on-one phone conversation. And in those conversations, I just asked for, kind of like their background, their history. I did have a little bit of recruiting overlap with some of our players when I was at Colgate, so there was some familiarity there. But I basically just asked them to describe themselves, describe their experience, talk about what things truly define their experience and were positive components of their time on this team. And then, what disconnects do we have? Where are areas for improvement? What do you see as an area that we can get better at? And in today's world, especially in a sport like golf, where you're not implementing an offense, you're not talking about plays. So much of our team success is going to be empowering each individual to be the best version of themselves. And some guys might be great ball strikers, some guys might be great putters, some guys might hit it a long way, other guys might, just be shorter but be a little bit more consistent. So identifying their strengths, with coming up with a game plan to try to be as corrective as possible with their weaknesses, making them feel supported. Building trust was honestly probably the biggest thing, was just letting them know, like, hey guys, I'm here for you. But that's something that takes time and patience and becomes so individualized. And so those were like my main priorities when I took over, was just getting to know the guys, getting perspective on the program. The team culture was in a great spot. They really they really get along really, really well. They look out for one another. They support each other. But once I got the picture on kind of what the vibe was, and where I could be of assistance, that's when we kind of got boots on the ground and started looking to improve those areas. And it was obviously a lot of fun. There were obviously their fair share of moments of a little bit of hiccups here and there, and a learning curve for sure. But at the same time, the guys all responded, and it was really kind of as seamless as I could imagine.
Did you actually get some constructive feedback from the players to be like I guess on maybe like the previous program, was there anything that they were like pointing out, like, hey, we want more trackmans, or we want Skittles in the vending machines, or something where you're like, okay, cool, that's something that I can definitely change, and if all the players are asking for it, like, were they able to give you constructive, or was it more on an individual basis?
There were both moments where we would have team and individual meetings. Obviously, the team stuff, you're throwing a blanket over things and just kind of looking to add a little bit more structure and guidance. And then the individual conversations were a little more intimate and not done in a group setting, just ways, whether it's getting them outfitted with the right equipment, talking about nutrition, talking about good practice habits, coming up with team game plans for how we attack the golf course when we're playing as a team, with a little bit of kind of like situationally specific examples where if we have a drivable par four, for example. Like, I've never been a coach that's been like, all right guys, full team, we're laying up here. This is not a we're not taking a head cover off here. Give the guys a little bit of individual freedom. There were some situations where we kind of talked about laying up on this par five, or hitting this club off the tee, or things of that nature. But really just implementing more structure, a little bit more consistency, and just helping each guy look at their metrics, look at their stats, and come up with game plans in their daily practice to keep improving.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot here, coach. So if I was to listen to the coach Tyburski TED Talk on what makes an elite golfer or an elite junior golfer, what would that TED Talk be? Like, what is it that makes the best over the rest?
I think the first place that you have to start is just your work ethic. You have to come equipped, showing up every day, ready to accomplish something. I kind of charge our athletes with, having a goal in mind. If we don't have a team activity or a team purpose for practice on any given day, really having some, don't just go to the golf course and be like, all right, I'll figure out what I'm going to do when I get there. Like, really be intentional. When you go to an academically rigorous institution, you don't have all day, every day to do as you please with golf. Like, you have to go to class, you got to go meet with professors, you have to, go to lectures and things of that nature. So it's not just like a la carte, once I'm done with class, I can do whatever I want. So you have to be a lot more intentional with your days, which leads me into sorry about that. I got something in my throat. Which brings me to my next point, which is time management skills, like the ability to map out your days, map out your weeks, map out your months. Know that if the Friday before we leave for a tournament, you have two tests and a paper due that week before we leave, like, you're going to have to be very, very thoughtful about your days, your hours, your minutes, what you choose, what you need to get done. Because like anything, if you're distracted off the golf course, you're not going to be able to be successful when you're on the course. You're going to be distracted. And so just being resilient is another huge thing, especially at schools in the Northeast. Like, Mother Nature is not always cooperative to us. It's not always 75 and sunny and dry and no wind. We play in some harsh conditions. So being prepared for the elements, making sure you're taking care of your bodies, resting, stretching, foam rolling, strength training, all of that stuff will pay dividends in the long haul, and it'll also give you more confidence knowing that you've taken care of yourself, and you're ready to perform. So it's just preparing them for competition, helping guide them through competitive moments, and helping them find positive outcomes, and then helping them learn and grow as individuals.
Hmm. Yeah, well said. So, okay, so you've made a living off of, analyzing the data, looking at the players, looking at their strengths or weaknesses, what they're doing well, what they need to like work on, and then coming up with practice game plans and like, helping to kind of mold and as you said, help them to be the best golfers that they can be. What advice would you give to, the average golf parent that's trying to do the same thing for their junior golfer right now, looking at their strengths and weaknesses, looking at their game and trying to figure out in a time efficient manner and in the most I guess end result efficient manner, what would be some ways that you can give advice as to how a golf parent can tackle that?
Yeah, I think the first point you start is just really, really being honest with yourself about what your purpose is. Define your why, right? Like, why am I doing this? Like, I knew when the second half of my high school career that I wanted to play college golf. And I knew that getting to that level to play at a high level was going to take a lot of hard work. And it required me to, be a little bit more analytical about what I'm doing, whether it be a swing tendency. Can I hit, every shot in the bag? And a lot of instructors and including a lot of the top players in the world kind of use like a tic-tac-toe board or a window pane analogy where you have 3 rows of 3 blocks. So you have 9 total blocks, 1, 2, 3 across the top, 4, 5, 6 in the middle, and 7, 8, 9 down below. A number 5 is going to be a medium trajectory straight shot. A number 1, if you're a righty, would be a high draw. A 9 would be a low fade, right? Can you go through your bag and hit all of those 9 shots? And if you can't hit all of those 9 shots, which ones can you hit under pressure? Which ones do you need to work on? When you get ready for a tournament, test yourself. What shots can I hit? What shots can I hit? If I can't hit a low fade on the range warming up for a tournament, when I get out onto a golf course, I'm not going to try to hit a low fade, just things like that. There's plenty of guys on the PGA Tour who've had tremendous success who probably only could hit 3 or 4 of those windows. They didn't try to do anything they weren't. They played, you and I are of similar age. You probably remember a guy named Kenny Perry. Kenny Perry played a sweeping hook every single time. He didn't try to hit cuts, and he had a really, really successful career. So but the end goal in your process and your practice would be able to hit all of those 9 shots, right? So challenging yourself in that realm, really, really being intentional with your practice. I know, I said that before, but I think that a good golf practice session should be divided up into 3 kind of segments. The first segment is just your warm up. You're just basically, if you're like me, you're popping vertebrae and trying to avoid pulling a hamstring or something like that. Just to get your body ready in that space. You're not really worried about where the golf ball goes. You're just preparing your body for activity. The second phase would be, some people call it block practice. You could also call it fundamental practice, where you aren't really worried about where the golf ball goes. You're just working on a fundamental that puts you in the position you need to be in to hit the shots you want. And after you go through your reps and you get your confidence, then you have to firmly draw the line in the sand between when you're done with your fundamental work and when you get into what's called random practice. Random practice, you're basically executing shots that you would on a golf course. The amount of time you hear a golfer say, "Oh, hey, I was hitting it great on the range, and then I went to the golf course and I couldn't do anything." Well, that's because you're probably not simulating your on-course play on the driving range. And so in this environment, you're never hitting the same shot twice in a row. You're never hitting the same club twice in a row. You're picking different targets. You're really going through your bag. You're going through your full pre-shot routine to simulate the spacing that happens. Because, if you give someone 10 8-irons in a row to hit consecutively, by the end of it, you're going to be able to find a groove. Well, on the golf course, the only time we really hit the same club or the same shot twice in a row is usually if we're hitting a provisional or we hit a ball out of bounds or something like that. And most times in that space, we're able to make the correction and make the swing. But in the purest competitive sense, we never hit the same shot twice in a row. So spacing your practice out that way, the more you can add pressure or simulate those competitive moments in your practice, the more familiar it will be. If you make practice hard, competing will seem easier.
What are some ways that we can manufacture that pressure in like practice? Like, do you have any good games or go-to kind of ways with the team or individually to help kind of simulate that pressure? Quick pause. If you're enjoying this episode, do me a huge favor, like, follow, or leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. It's the best way to help us grow the show and bring on even more incredible guests to support you and your junior golfer. And now, back to the episode.
Yeah, so one that we'll kind of work on will be, on a range you have like 3 or 4 chipping nets set up, and you can't leave until you get a ball into every net. Or sometimes that might be at the start of practice. Okay, guys, you gotta hit a ball in every one of these nets, and you can't work on anything else until you do it. So it's like, all right, I got pressure, I got to do this, or you go to a putting green and put 4 tees around the hole from 3 or 4 feet, and you got to go around and make 40 in a row, and you can't leave until you make all those putts in a row. And sometimes we've done that putting drill where, if we're pushed for time, maybe it'll only be like 20 in a row, and the second a guy will get to putt 16 or 17, he'll have to say, hey guys, I'm at putt 17, and everybody else will stop in the middle of the drill and watch them make those last 3 or 4 putts, so that they know that, like, hey, everyone's watching me. I know that I'm not allowed to, go get dinner or lunch or whatever until I do this. And it, kind of enacts that competitive pressure.
Okay, let me see if I understand both those drills correct. Are those nets in the first and the chipping drill, are those at strategic distances like 50, 70, 120 yards, or are they just random?
I mean, obviously you're gonna be at the mercy of how the facility is set up and what, is out there and that kind of a thing. But again, in a perfect world, even if, you're just working on, in this example, say like just some little wedges, you're never allowed to hit to the same target twice in a row. And if you have a limited number of targets, never hit the same club twice in a row, right? Like there's a number of times where you'll be hitting a lob wedge 60 yards, and you also might have to hit a sand wedge or a gap wedge 60 yards. So always going through your full routine, changing clubs, and in essence, making it unfamiliar, because that is what you're going to see on a golf course.
Hmm. And then the putting drill, those 4 tees around the hole. Sorry, was that 3 or 4 feet each?
Yeah.
Each.
Like, I mean, and this is where, you take a little bit of accountability on yourself, right? Like, obviously you have a greater chance of making a 3-footer. And if you do the tees from 3 feet and it's really pretty easy for you, then, jump back to 4 feet, make it a little harder. And, you start with, say the tees are placed kind of like 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. You start at 12, you make it, you go to 9, you make it, you go to 6, you make it, you go to 3, and you keep doing the wheel until you make them all. And if you miss, you start over again, and go till you can't.
Hmm. I love that. So okay, so going back to kind of, it seems like your philosophy when it comes to practicing. Would it be fair to say that, let's just say tournament week or leading up to a tournament, you're more practicing your strengths to make sure that, like, if you're playing that low sweeping hook and that's your go-to, to make sure you got that dialed in, and then when you've got more time in between tournaments, that's when you're trying to work on your weaknesses?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be completely respective to where we're at. Sequentially, weekly. If we have tournaments on consecutive weekends, or we've just played 3 tournaments in 4 weeks, like, practice might be a little lighter. We might just kind of be looking just to stay sharp. Obviously, if you have more time in between tournaments or competitive opportunities, that's when you might do a little bit of a deeper dive. If I had to kind of map out, like a standard week of kind of practice, like, for academically engineered schools, the majority of our tournaments are on weekends because we don't want to miss as much class. We want to keep our athletes on campus so they can properly engage that. So traditionally, you're leaving for a tournament on a Friday morning, playing a practice round Friday afternoon, competing Saturday, competing Sunday, home Sunday night. Mondays are usually the off day following a tournament. Tuesdays to tend to be what I like to call like reflection days. So you think back to whether you just qualified or you just played in the tournament, and that's kind of your day to be like, all right, yeah, this worked great, this didn't work great. All right, I'm going to come up with a game plan and do what I need to do to be successful. A lot of sometimes on the Wednesdays we'll do like a group activity, whether it's playing a fun match if we have time, or just playing holes on the golf course for score with a specific goal or task in mind. And then pre-tournament, everyone kind of has their own model for what they like to do, for a pre-tournament routine. Some guys want to play, some guys want to hit balls and just putt or take it, kind of have a lighter day. Some guys might need to get their homework done. There's no real rhyme or reason. There's a couple of situationally relevant examples would be, if we go to play a golf course that has a lot of long par fours. We know we're going to have a lot of mid irons into greens. All right, well, we're going to hit a lot of mid irons in practice. Or on the flip side of that, if we're playing a really short golf course, we'll go to a golf course and play it from a forward set of tees and get used to having, maybe take less than driver off some holes, or really get our wedges, kind of honed in. Or, if we're playing, one time I can think of, we played a golf course that had 3 par threes and 1 par fives, which meant that we had 14 par fours. So we reconfigured our routing on the golf course to play a couple of par fives up as par fours, so that we got used to kind of the normalcy of, playing a lot of par fours and things of that nature. A lot of ways you can get creative to kind of prepare for a tournament with your practice.
That makes a lot of sense. And then, okay, so you're reflecting or so Monday's just kind of like a rest day, recovery day. Tuesday, you're kind of reflecting. You're not watching game film like other sports. It's more like you're looking at how many fairways you hit, how many putts you took, and then together with the coaches and the players, you guys are coming up with kind of a bit more of a game plan for those players, knowing that there's going to be another tournament potentially in the week. Or what does that Tuesday reflection day look like?
Yeah, so that'll we in conjunction with the NCAA protocols, we have to give the athletes 1 day off per week. Now, what the athletes choose to do with their day off is completely up to them. If they want to go play golf, they can go play golf, but we can't have any kind of like coach supervision. The off days are the days where I look back at the statistics from the rounds and kind of develop a game plan for the week. More times than not, those Tuesday days will be individually specific, where each guy has the jurisdiction to think about what they did or didn't do well. Wednesday, if I look back at our numbers and there's no real significant reason jumping off the page for why something might happen, like if we didn't putt well on a weekend, right? Like as a collective team, our putting just wasn't there, and the greens either weren't, there wasn't an anomaly with the greens, like they were punched or had a ton of slope or were ungodly firm or something like that. Then like, all right, guys, Wednesday, we're going to work on lag putting as a team, because even though some of you might have been better than others at lag putting, collectively we struggled in this environment. So this is what we're going to do today. One of the challenges with the sport of golf is, in college golf specifically, the team comes first. Okay. And so the more we can broadcast terminology and models in a team structure, the better, because, it is a very individual game. And the success of our team is not possible without the contributions of those on an individual level. And that's where, I kind of touched on each individual kind of having some freedoms to play within their own strengths to be the best version of themselves. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, we're a team. We operate as a team, much like any other sport. And, we want to come up with team game plans for what we're going to do to be successful.
I love that. Maybe I'll give you a second to hydrate there. This is a man that's been making a lot of telephone calls and a lot of talking to a lot of recruits. You can tell. So I appreciate you using your voice
No
to help
problem.
the golf parents right now. So okay, so Coach, you played high level college golf yourself. You also turned pro and played a couple years, on the developmental tours, correct?
Yes.
What do you know now that you wish you would have known maybe when you were back, 10, 12, 14 years old?
I think, especially today, like I was really afraid to admit where I wasn't good. Like I just wanted to portray this like confidence, this, to a certain extent, arrogance of like, hey, I can beat anybody. I'm the best. like, I don't want to work on my swing because nothing's wrong with it, right? And then, when I got to going from junior golf to college golf to certainly playing at the professional level, and I had, top instructors that have worked with, very successful touring pros be like, hey, you got to get your swing more repeatable, or, you can't hit, that 9 shot example I used earlier. Like, you can't hit all of those shots right now. And when you're on tour and you're trying to be the best of the best, you need all of these shots, and it's going to require this to change, that to change. You need to really be mindful of that. And the one thing that I did exceptionally well as a junior golfer, and my parents were so great at this, is it has to, before anything else, it has to be fun. There will be moments and times where it is not as fun as it normally is, but all of those moments when I think back to when I didn't have the desired result or outcome I hoped for, like, I would beat myself up so bad, instead of shifting the narrative and being like, okay, what can I learn from this? Instead of being like, so upset. There's nothing wrong with being emotionally invested. You need it, certainly. But, just like the guy that wins and the guy that loses, they both eat lunch at the same table after the round. Like, playing bad golf does not define you as a human being. And I really struggled with that for a while. I would kind of be like, I'm less of a person because I didn't play well. It's just like, no, that just means I didn't have my best stuff today. What didn't work, and try to come up with the why and then be corrective with it. So just a little bit of, if I were talking to my younger self, I was pretty hard on myself when things didn't go my way. I would have kind of shifted the narrative and kind of tricked myself into seeing those as learning opportunities instead of defining moments, because every little bit of adversity you go through and all those tough moments, whether it be in golf or in life, that's how you grow as a person. And I see that much more now that I'm a coach than I did when I was, as a junior golfer or a college player. And some of that obviously just comes with inevitable age and maturity. But at the same time, like, just having those firm conversations, keeping it fun, defining your why. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? Like, coming up with a purpose. Being a high level athlete in any sport, especially when you go from high school and junior levels to college, is going to come with a lot of sacrifice. You're choosing the road less traveled, in essence, because you're not going to be able to do whatever you want with all of your free time. You're going to have to do things that all of your other friends don't have. They don't have that commitment. And so it's really, it's an I don't this is it's all positive. I wouldn't certainly trade anything I've done for anything. But it comes with some trying moments, but you have to remember that that's how you learn and grow.
Oh, it's so well said. I mean, like, there is no growth without adversity. Like, that is how we grow. Okay, so there's a couple different ways I want to go here, but I'm going to go back for a second and be like, okay, so if you were caddying or on the bag of your younger self, and you're right in the middle of a round where you're facing adversity, and you're right at that pivot point, maybe it's been a couple bogeys in a row or whatever it is, like, knowing what you know now about sports psychology and coaching, all the rest of that, like, what would you say to your younger self to ready the ship and like potentially be able to turn it around?
I'd just be like, hey, look, you had a couple bad holes, you made a couple bad swings or weren't committed. We can't change the past, but we're still here. We're still competing. Every shot is a new opportunity to show what you've got. Keep your head up, keep working. Don't try to hit shots that you don't have right now. Keep things simple. There's no reason to make things even more complex when we can't solve a bad round with one swing. We have to be patient and remember why we're here, who we're doing this for, and see confident targets, don't see negative outcomes.
I love that. See confident targets, not negative outcomes. I mean, it's implicit in what you're saying. I've just never heard it phrased that way. Where'd you get that from? See confident targets, not negative
I
outcomes.
mean, part of it was just my own. That's one of the things, with our players that I kind of, are three kind of like, philosophies or thoughts. I make little cards for our guys with some reminders on them that are individually specific, and on them are, as our team, we have kind of like three common points. And the first one is Pick a confident target. The second one is see a positive shot. And the third is trust in your ability and trust yourself. And so that was quite honestly something that I just kind of, um, came up with. I'm sure I've inevitably leaned on some of my peers or those that educated me for the wisdom and the perspective on that. But I don't want to misspeak here, but I'm pretty sure that was organic to my own thoughts.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to go back. So you had mentioned, when you were playing and just kind of junior golf, the most important thing is to keep it fun because there's so much pressure and all the rest of it that comes with the game. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second here. The danger, I think, with a lot of parents and coaches, and if we set up the game to be fun, and it inevitably is going to be not fun a lot, and there's also that prevalence of kids quitting and giving up early just because it's not fun anymore. How do we balance that with, like, hey, it's got to be fun, but then also to teach perseverance and grit and that stick through itness that we know leads to so much success down the road?
Yeah, I know that. And that's a great point. Especially, obviously, there's fun golf and there's competitive golf, and the two in a perfect world mix. But a lot of times, they don't, and so it comes down to really managing expectations and setting goals. What do I want to accomplish? It needs to be fun, but if you aspire to, play at the Division 1 level per se, and you're not playing well, those are times when it's going to turn to, I need to have honest conversations about what's not working, figure out where I'm missing or what I can do better, and then set a path and create a sorry, dog in the background going nuts.
No, that's all good.
And then coming up with a game plan for how to get there. And obviously, when you're looking at where you want to go or what your top schools might be and things of that nature, you got to look at the results and look at what schools look for in a prospect, and just have honest conversations about with where you're at and where you might be able to get.
How do you know what schools you're looking for in a prospect? Like, is that published somewhere? Is that, I guess, part of the conversations that you're having with the recruits and the coaches? But like, how do you, if you've got your mindset on your top three schools, how do you know whether or not you're what they're looking for?
So, obviously, like when a recruit is doing their due diligence about an institution and a program, that's a great question to ask. What do you typically look for in a recruit? What does the resume look like? Things of that nature. Obviously, we want, college coaches want to see success, on every different level imaginable. If you're just starting out and you're only playing in local events, the second you kind of break through and get confident in playing those local events, then jump to the regional events. You start getting success in the regional events, then boom, let's test ourselves on the national stage. It's kind of like a little bit of a building block model in that mindset. And sometimes you might have to revert back if you've been playing on the national stage and things haven't been going your way. Then maybe you need to play in an event that you're going to get your confidence back. So college golf, is not primarily a regional thing. We play against golfers from all over the world on courses all over, the US and sometimes internationally. And so when you're playing in tournaments, the more experience to different environments you have, that's going to make a college coach feel good about, where your game will translate. I grew up in upstate New York. I had never played on Bermuda grass until I was 16 years old. I hit it in the left rough on a hole my first time and hit a flyer 30 yards over the green, and just kind of was like, oh boy, I gotta do some learning here. The chipping was so different. But you get in those environments, and you start to learn new techniques and new shots. And so it's a blend of how do you jump off the page, how do you conduct yourself in the recruiting process. Golf, we're so lucky with the fabric of golf, and that there's not too many sports that call penalties on ourselves. There's a lot of integrity, and so that kind of lends itself towards all golfers being high character individuals. But that's another important component of it as well.
Huh. Oh, I know you're busy. I know you got more phone calls to be making and getting more recruits, to the school. But I'm kind of curious. You've got the eyes and the ears of golf parents all over the country, all over the world. What advice would you give them to just help facilitate and support their kids' journey from junior golf to, hopefully the Division One level?
Yeah, I would start with literally, I mean, obviously age is going to be a little bit, relative to the answer to this, but ask them why. When I was a junior golfer and I, started having success, I was like, I want to play college golf. My parents like, why do you want to play college golf? And like if you're just like, well, because of the curb appeal or because that seems like the fun thing to do, then you might need to have a bit of a reset. Like I knew that like wearing a school's colors, carrying the bag was a must have for me. And I was willing to do whatever it took, working hard, spending the extra hour on the range of the putting green, going out of my way to contact a coach or find a tournament to play in that would give me better exposure, give me better opportunity. But you really, really ask them why. And I think obviously parents need to be supportive. Whenever we're talking with the recruit, I always say like, hey, make sure you talk this over with your parents because they're your biggest fans and they've been supporting you since day one. So really just, it sounds again simple. I'm a pretty simple guy, but why do you want to play college golf? What what out of that experience are you looking for? Because there is a number of times where it's just kind of like, oh, well, it just seems like the fun thing or the cool thing to do, and you don't realize that playing a college sport comes with a lot of sacrifice. And as coaches, we want to avoid, kind of, creating a false perspective on what life's going to be like when you get on campus.
What is that you've seen like for freshmen when they come in? Like, have you seen a pattern of shock and like awe when they first come on where you're like, interesting, this seems to be a recurring pattern that, freshmen when they first get into the school, they're like, I wasn't expecting this or I wasn't ready for this aspect.
Yeah, so we'll continually meet with our athletes regardless of their class year and just kind of be like, especially with the first years when they're reflecting back, even after the first month or first semester, or certainly the first year, I just kind of be like, all right, so was it what you thought it was? What was different? What was unexpected? There's always going to be a little bit of a learning curve, and especially now you dive into the world of going to an academically rigorous institution. Like you have to adjust to what that's like. Some kids come in with the work ethic, they've achieved great things in high school academically, and they get to college and it can be seamless. And others might not have that. It might be a complete, wow, I just got my first B minus. Excuse me, I just got my first B minus on a test or a presentation, and I've never gotten anything below an A, and that can rip your foundation out from under you. So I always tell the first years, like, be kind to yourself, give yourself permission to get a few things wrong, but as long as you learn and you keep adapting to your surroundings, you'll be okay. Another wrinkle that we have, and it's mainly a college golf thing, and certainly it's more of an NCAA hurdle, is most college golf programs start their competitive seed segment right away in the fall when classes start. But because our championship is in the spring, we can't have a preseason. So there's no real like team bonding opportunity to get to know one another, get all on the same page. And so there's ways you can get around that with, having kids come in after they've been committed and meet the team and stay in touch. And obviously, in today's world is immensely different than when I was going about my college recruitment process and kind of like assimilation into the team with social media and communication and again, things of that nature. But just how much can we get out ahead of all of those kind of unfamiliar moments so that when we're there, we position ourselves to be as ready as we possibly can be. But there's no foolproof way to avoid any kind of uncertainty or anomalies or things of that nature. It's just a matter of keeping your head up, again, being kind to yourself and giving yourself grace to accept that. And every now and again you get it right and it's like, coach, everything's good. But a lot of times it will require some pivots and having to be a little bit extra supportive of prospects, especially a couple of years ago we had we had a kid on the team that was from New Zealand, and he was half a world away from his home and family. And, that can be pretty intimidating. I went to school 1,000 miles from home, and that felt far away. I can't imagine what it's like to be on the other side of the planet from everything that's familiar to you. So it's just being there for them. Again, building trust, letting them know that you're there for them. It all goes a long way.
It certainly sounds like the supportive kind of environment that you'd want to send your kid to. So for those parents that are looking to, or anybody to kind of follow along on Yale's kind of journey, what's the best way for them to socials, website, stay in touch with you or reach out to you initially? Like what's the best way for them, anybody to?
Yeah, emailing is great. Again, I would encourage the parents to certainly be supportive and help your sons or daughters throughout the process, but to have the athlete initiate all of the contact and be the primary go-to as the process develops. Inevitably, there will be some overlaps, or maybe some questions that the parent needs to ask that the kid won't. But to let the kid kind of drive the bus, because the kid is the one that we're going to be interacting with, coaching with, guiding, mentoring, and all of that stuff. So let them kind of take the initiative, be there to support them, help them, again, identify, really identify the why. I can't say that enough. It's, one of the cliches that we get is, "Oh, coach, I just want to play golf at an Ivy League school." Every school in the Ivy League is vastly different. Our setups, our, campuses, everything. So, some might be right for you, some might not be right for you. So really do your homework. If you want to go to school a long way from home, that's one thing. If you want to go to school close to home, that's a different one. Does climate matter? Does school size matter? Does being in a small town or a big city matter? These are all great questions to ask yourself. And at the end of the day, there's no right or wrong. Every individual is going to thrive under a different environment. And so it's just a matter of what works for you.
Yeah, I love that. Last question here. I know off air we are talking about the fact that you've got a hockey game later today that you're going to, and that you grew up playing hockey as well. I'm curious, with everything you've seen, what other sports aside from golf like kind of complements? Like if you were to look on a resume and be like, cool, this recruit played these other three sports at a high level. Like, what sports would you think have the best chance to translate to being a better golfer?
I would say anything where you're holding on to a bat, a stick, a racket, things of that. Anything else that is requires like hand-eye coordination with a outside, kind of utility. I would say that those are probably the best, just because of the dexterity. Obviously, golf is probably the only sport where the ball is not moving when you hit it. You're just sitting there looking at it, as opposed to a hockey puck flying around, a baseball coming at you, a tennis ball bouncing whichever way it's going to go. That's probably the best. But I think playing any sport, honestly, will bring benefit and certainly perspective to golf. Just where golf is, we're so different from every other sport, and we're out there all by ourselves, and most times we only have ourselves to blame. We're not worried about what the opponent did. We're playing the golf course. And so but I do think that continuing to play other sports and engage in other team dynamics and having that other dexterity will definitely benefit anybody.
Awesome. Any parting words from your end? Anything that you'd like to say to golf parents out there?
No, obviously, especially in recent months, the collegiate landscape within the NCAA is kind of uncertain. It's a little bit like the wild, wild west right now, where no one really knows what's going to happen with transfer portals and NIL stuff and things of that nature. Is just know that, especially within golf, there's a place to play literally for almost everybody. There are opportunities there. It's just a matter of doing your homework, figuring out what your best fits might be. Another great question to ask your sons or daughters would be, like, do you want to go to a school where you're at the top of the food chain and you're going to be the best, or do you want to go somewhere where you might just be kind of competing to get in the lineup, and might be in some weeks and might be out some others. Obviously, those are going to be two vastly different experiences. But just know that there's no right or wrong. I didn't get it right the first time. I transferred schools, and it was one of the hardest but best things I've ever done in my life. And it was tough to see in those tough moments, but I persevered and had a great positive experience stemming from that. And so I know it's an intimidating landscape. There's a lot of uncertainties. Every coach and every school kind of has their own little, unique elements about them. But just know that with high character and a lot of hard work, that good things will happen.
What a perfect way to end it. Coach, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for coming on the Golf Parent Podcast.
My pleasure, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in. As a fellow golf parent, I know how much this journey matters. If this podcast helped you even 1%, please consider following and reviewing it. It's the #1 way to grow the community and keep bringing you elite insights week after week. And while you're here, check out the show description for exclusive discounts from our sponsors, handpicked to help your junior golfer train smarter and play better.